The recon shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with the kind of confidence that comes from 300 years of galactic superiority. Inside, Commander Vex 9 of the Kalorn Empire checked his scanner for the 4th time in as many minutes, watching the thermal signature of their target pulse, like a tiny beacon in the dense green hell below. "Remind me again why we're doing this?" Junior Scout Tick muttered, his mandibles clicking nervously as he peered through the viewport at the endless canopy of what the humans called the Amazon. "Because High Command wants a specimen," Vex 9 replied, his voice dripping with the exhaustion of someone who'd stopped questioning orders 3 assignments ago. A young one. Supposedly easier to study. Less violent than the adults. Tick let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a wheeze. "Less violent? Have you read the reports from the extraction teams on Continent 7? Those human juveniles threw rocks, Commander." "Rocks?" One of them bit Lieutenant Zarn so hard he needed medical reconstruction. That was different. How? That was a populated area. This, Vex 9 gestured at the green infinity below them, is wilderness. The child is alone, separated from its tribe during some kind of primitive family ritual. We grab it, we're gone, and we're drinking synthetic ethanol in the observation lounge before dinner cycle. The shuttle settled into a hover above a small clearing. Through the canopy, they could make out a crude shelter, the kind humans built when they were pretending to enjoy discomfort. Their scanners showed one small heat signature inside. "Target confirmed," Vex 9 announced, standing and checking his paralysis rifle. "Single, juvenile. Approximately 8 solar cycles old according to bone density scans. No adult humans within 5 kilometers. What about the local wildlife?" Tick asked, his voice climbing an octave. "What about it? We have kinetic shields, plasma weapons, and 3 centuries of military evolution. I think we can handle whatever Earth's little ecosystem throws at us." Famous last words, as the humans like to say. They rappelled down through the canopy, their descent stabilizers making quick work of the 100-meter drop. The air hit them like a wet towel, thick with moisture and the smell of decomposition. Everything on Earth smelled like it was either growing or dying, sometimes both at once. "I hate this planet," Tick whispered, swatting at something small and bitey that had immediately taken an interest in his left antenna. "Everyone hates this planet," Vex 9 agreed. "That's why the humans are perfect for the labor colonies. If they can survive here, they can survive anywhere." They approached the shelter, weapons raised. Inside, they could hear soft breathing. The child was asleep, completely unaware that its life was about to take a dramatically different turn. Vex 9 signaled to Tick, 3 fingers, 2, 1. They burst through the flimsy fabric door, paralysis, rifles aimed at the small form curled up in a primitive sleeping apparatus. The child jolted awake, eyes wide. Female. Vex 9 noted. Dark skin, darker hair, wearing clothing covered in patterns of leaves and animals. Remain calm. Young human, Vex 9 said in his most soothing voice, which admittedly sounded like gravel in a blender. "We will not harm you if you cooperate." The girl's name was Maya, though they wouldn't learn that for several minutes. At that moment, she was too busy screaming at a pitch that made Tick's antennae flatten against his skull. "Stun her," Tick shouted over the noise. "I'm trying." Vex 9 squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. He looked at his weapon in confusion, then at his hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from vibration. The entire shelter was vibrating. No, not the shelter. The ground. "Commander?" Tick's voice had gone very small. Through the shelter's entrance, through the pre-dawn gloom of the jungle, something was coming. They could hear it now over Maya's screaming. The sound of vegetation being demolished with extreme prejudice, of small trees snapping like twigs, of something that absolutely did not care what got in its way. "What is that?" Tick whispered. Vex 9 consulted his scanner with trembling fingers. The readings made no sense. The mass was all wrong for the speed. Nothing that size should move that fast. Nothing that aggressive should exist outside of a military bioweapon facility. He swallowed hard. It's a Mellivora capensis. A what? The humans call it a honey badger. Tick stared at him. That's the most ridiculous name I've ever heard. Yeah. Well, the humans have a saying about them. Vex 9 was backing toward the far wall of the shelter now, dragging Maya with him despite her struggles. Honey badger don't care. What does that mean? I think we're about to find out. The creature exploded through the shelter wall like it was made of tissue paper. Actually, the shelter was made of advanced synthetic fiber rated for extreme weather conditions. But the honey badger didn't seem to have read the specifications. Tick got a good look at it, and immediately wished he hadn't. It was perhaps a meter long, built like a biological tank, with a face that suggested its mother was a wolverine and its father was pure concentrated rage. Its fur was thick, its claws were enormous, and its eyes held the kind of malice usually reserved for war criminals and tax collectors. Shoot it! Vex 9 screamed, which was perhaps the least useful command he'd ever given. Tick fired. The paralysis bolt hit the honey badger square in the chest. The creature looked down at the impact point, looked back up at Tick, and then resumed its charge with what could only be described as increased enthusiasm. Why isn't it stopping? Tick shrieked, firing again. And again. Each shot was perfect. Each shot did absolutely nothing. Too much muscle mass. Vex 9 was frantically adjusting his weapon settings. The paralysis charge can't penetrate to the nervous system. Then use lethal force. That's a protected species on this planet. Do you want to start an interplanetary incident? I want to not be eaten. The honey badger had reached Tick now. What happened next would be described in the official report as a regrettable encounter with hostile indigenous fauna. What actually happened was that the honey badger introduced Tick to the concept of Earth's apex predators not being the largest animals, but the angriest. Tick's shields flared, sparked, and died. His armor held for approximately 3 seconds, which was impressive considering it was rated for sustained heavy weapons fire. Then the honey badger demonstrated why evolution had given it claws that could dig through termite mounds and teeth that could crunch through turtle shells. The screaming was terrible. Vex 9 would hear it in his sleep for years. "Retreat!" he yelled, grabbing Maya and running for the shelter's ruined entrance. Behind him, Tick managed to break free, leaving several pieces of his armor and dignity behind. They burst into the jungle at full sprint, their night vision illuminating the nightmare landscape of twisted vines and hidden roots. Maya was fighting him every step, small fists pounding against his chest plate. But Vex 9 had bigger problems. The honey badger was following. "It's still coming." Tick wheezed, his damaged leg servo whining with each step. "Why is it still coming?" "Because that's what they do," Vex 9 shouted back. He'd read the full file on Earth predators during the flight, mostly out of boredom. He'd thought the entries on honey badgers were exaggerated. Propaganda, even. He'd been wrong. So very wrong. The creature was relentless. It crashed through the undergrowth behind them like a furry missile programmed for destruction. Vex 9 risked a glance back and saw it scaling a fallen log with the ease of something that had been personally insulted by the concept of obstacles. "The shuttle!" Tick gasped. "Call for extraction." Vex 9 tried. His communicator was dead. He looked at it in disbelief, then realized with mounting horror that the honey badger's first attack had damaged his equipment harness. The main transmitter was sparking uselessly. "We're on our own." "Then what's the plan?" "Keep running." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. They crashed through the jungle like two soldiers who'd seriously reconsidered their career choices. Vines grabbed at them. Insects swarmed them. Something that sounded suspiciously like a jaguar gave them a curious growl from a nearby tree, took one look at what was chasing them, and very sensibly decided to be literally anywhere else. Even the other predators knew better than to mess with a honey badger on a mission. Maya had stopped struggling. She was staring back at their pursuer with something that looked almost like awe. Then she did something that made Vex 9's blood run cold. She smiled. "No," he said. "No, no, no. Do not smile at the death machine." But it was too late. Maya recognized her defender. She'd been camping with her father and uncle, learning survival skills. She'd seen honey badgers before, from a safe distance. She'd heard the stories, and now one was coming to her rescue, mistaking these strange creatures for a threat to its territory. Or maybe it didn't care about the reason. Maybe it just wanted violence. And these aliens had been convenient. Honey badgers were flexible like that. The river. Tick pointed ahead, where a break in the canopy showed moonlight reflecting off water. We can cross it. Honey badgers can swim. Can they swim faster than we can? It was a terrible plan. But again, it was what they had. They crashed through the last line of vegetation and splashed into the water. It was cold, fast-moving, and full of things that probably wanted to eat them. Still better than what was behind them. They waded in up to their chests, the current pulling at them. Maya coughed, spitting out water. Behind them, the honey badger emerged from the trees. It looked at the river. It looked at them. It appeared to calculate the effort-to-violence ratio. Then, in a move that would haunt Vex 9's nightmares forever, it started to wade in after them. It's following us into the water. Tick's voice was pure panic now. What do we do? Vex 9 looked around desperately. Downstream, maybe 50 meters away, the river curved around a bend. If they could just reach it, maybe they could lose their pursuer in the darkness. Swim, he ordered. They struck out across the current, fighting against the pull. Maya was light enough that Vex 9 could keep her head above water, while still making decent progress. Tick was struggling, his damaged leg servo dragging like an anchor. The honey badger was gaining. Of course it was. Because honey badgers, Vex 9 was learning, did not understand the concept of giving up. They were biologically incapable of retreat. They were what happened when evolution decided that an animal needed to be 50% muscle, 30% bad attitude, and 20% pure weaponized spite. They rounded the bend. Ahead, Vex 9 could see a sandbar, then dense jungle again. Maybe they could hide. Maybe they could climb. Maybe they could find a cave or a crevice too small for the badger to follow. Maybe they should have picked literally any other planet to raid for specimens. His feet touched bottom. He pulled Maya up onto the sandbar, Tick splashing up beside him a moment later. They turned to look back at the river. The honey badger was standing in the shallows, water dripping from its fur. It watched them. They watched it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the badger made a sound. It was part growl, part snarl, part declaration of eternal war. It was the sound of an animal that wanted them to know this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And if they ever came back to its jungle again, it would find them. Then it turned and waded back toward the far bank. Vex 9 didn't move for a full minute. Neither did Tick. They stood there, dripping and exhausted, watching as the creature disappeared into the trees. Tick began, then had to stop to catch his breath. Did it just let us go? I think, Vex 9 said slowly. It decided we weren't worth the effort of crossing the river. We're outside its territory now. So we're safe? For now. They looked at each other. They looked at Maya, who was shivering but unharmed. They looked back at the jungle, where dawn was starting to paint the canopy in shades of gold and green. We need to get back to the shuttle, Vex 9 said finally. What about the mission? The specimen? Vex 9 looked down at Maya. She looked back at him with eyes that held far too much intelligence for comfort. Eyes that seemed to say she'd remember this. Eyes that promised if they tried this again next time she'd be ready. And she'd probably bring the honey badger. You know what? Vex 9 reached down and started working on the quick release for her restraints. I think High Command can find their own specimen, preferably from a species that doesn't have wildlife like that protecting them. He freed Maya's hands. She rubbed her wrists, looking between him and Tick with obvious confusion. Go, Vex 9 said, pointing back toward the shelter. Home, family, run. Maya didn't need to be told twice. She was off like a shot, splashing back through the shallows and disappearing into the jungle without a backward glance. Tick stared at him. Did you just release our mission objective? I just released a child back to her family. Command is going to kill us. Command can try. Vex 9 started trudging up the sandbar toward where his scanner said the shuttle was waiting. But first they'll have to explain why they sent us after a species that's apparently under the protection of the galaxy's most psychotic mammals. They walked in silence for a while, the sounds of the waking jungle building around them. Birds called, monkeys howled, insects hummed their morning songs. Somewhere in the distance, very faint, they heard another sound. A honey badger's growl. Tick walked faster. The shuttle's medical bay smelled like burnt circuitry and shame. Tick sat on the examination table while the automated systems tried to piece his armor back together, occasionally emitting sad beeping noises that suggested even the machines were judging their performance. "So," Vex 9 said, staring at the ceiling panels like they held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. "We flew halfway across the galaxy, landed in hostile territory, got attacked by something that weighs less than standard combat rations, lost our target, and now we have to explain this to command. You forgot the part where we also lost 3 days' worth of sensor data when that thing crushed my equipment pack," Tick added helpfully. His voice had taken on the hollow quality of someone who'd accepted their fate. "Also, I'm pretty sure it ate my breath. Emergency beacon." "It ate your beacon?" "Swallowed it whole. I watched it happen. Didn't even chew." Vex 9 let his head fall back against the bulkhead with a dull thunk. "Of course it did. Why wouldn't it? Why should anything about this mission make sense?" The shuttle's communication system chirped. Both of them froze. That particular chirp meant one thing: incoming transmission from the fleet. "Maybe they won't notice we're early," Tick whispered. "We're 12 hours early. We're missing a specimen. You look like you fought a plasma grinder. And our report is going to read like bad fiction. They'll notice." The chirp became more insistent. Vex 9 sighed and moved to the console. Commander Vex 9 responding. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Fleet Admiral Cross. She had the kind of face that suggested she'd been born scowling and had simply never stopped. Her tactical implant glowed red against her temple, which meant she was already annoyed before she'd even heard their excuse. "Commander, you're ahead of schedule. Please tell me this means the mission was a spectacular success, and you're bringing me usable intelligence on human juvenile psychology." "Not exactly, Admiral." Her scowl deepened. "Define not exactly." "Well, we located the target as planned, approached the shelter, made contact with the specimen. All by the book. Really very textbook. Up until that point. And then we encountered an unforeseen variable." Admiral Cross leaned forward. "What kind of variable?" "Then, indigenous fauna. Highly aggressive. Approximately 1 meter in length, minimal body mass, maximum hostility. The humans call it a honey badger." There was a long silence. Then Admiral Cross did something Vex 9 had never seen her do in 15 years of service. She laughed. Not a polite chuckle or a strategic display of humor. An actual, genuine laugh that went on for several uncomfortable seconds. "A honey badger," she finally managed. "You're telling me that 2 trained military operatives, equipped with advanced weaponry and armor, were driven off by a honey badger? With respect, Admiral, the reports on Earth's fauna are significantly understated. This creature demonstrated capabilities far beyond its size classification. Standard paralysis weapons were ineffective. It breached military-grade armor. It pursued us across hostile terrain and through water. It exhibited no fear response whatsoever. It's a terrestrial mammal, Commander. It weighs what, 10 kilograms? 12, according to our scans. But that 12 kilograms is apparently composed entirely of rage and spite." Tick leaned into the frame. "It ate my beacon, Admiral." "Why would it eat your beacon?" "We have no idea, ma'am. Spite, maybe." Admiral Cross pinched the bridge of her nose. "Where is the specimen now?" "Released back into the wild," Vex 9 said quickly. "We determined that continued pursuit would result in unacceptable casualties and potential violations of the galactic protection protocols for endangered species. The child isn't endangered. The honey badger is. Apparently. According to Earth's conservation databases. So you abandoned a high-value intelligence target because you were afraid of damaging the local wildlife?" When you phrase it like that, it sounds bad, Vex 9 admitted. That's because it is bad, Commander. Admiral Cross's brief moment of humor had evaporated. Do you understand what this mission cost? The resources allocated? The political capital spent getting approval for a specimen extraction? Yes, Admiral. And do you understand that High Command is going to want a very detailed explanation for why we're returning empty-handed? Yes, Admiral. Good. She leaned back in her chair. Then you'll be pleased to know that I'm reassigning you both. Effective immediately. Tick made a small whimpering sound. Reassigning us where? Vex 9 asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Desk duty. Archive maintenance. You'll be cataloging historical data from the expansion wars. Both of you. For the next 6 cycles. 6 cycles of archive duty. It was the military equivalent of being sent to stand in a corner and think about what you'd done. Vex 9 had seen careers end in archive maintenance. Officers went in and never came out, slowly becoming part of the filing systems themselves. Admiral, please, let us make this right. One more extraction attempt. Different location. Better preparation. Stronger equipment. Absolutely not. But, Commander. Admiral Cross's voice went dangerously quiet. Do you know what happened when High Command reviewed your mission footage? Vex 9 and Tick exchanged glances. Footage? Vex 9 said weakly. Your armor cameras. The ones that automatically upload to secure servers. The ones that captured everything. Oh no. The entire command staff watched a recording of 2 elite soldiers running screaming through the jungle while being chased by an animal roughly the size of a standard cargo container. It's already circulating through the fleet. Someone set it to music. Terrible. Bouncy human music. Tick buried his face in his hands. So no, Commander. You will not be getting another chance at Earth. You will report to Archive Station Theta 7. You will process historical documents, and you will be grateful that I'm not court-martialing you for incompetence. Do I make myself clear? Crystal clear, Admiral. Excellent. Cross out. The hologram winked out, leaving them in silence, except for the gentle hum of the shuttle's engines and the sound of Tick's quiet sobbing. Well, Vex 9 said after a moment, that could have gone worse. How? Tick's voice was muffled by his hands. How could that possibly have gone worse? She could have actually shown us the video. A new chirp from the console. Vex 9 looked at it with growing dread. It was a file transfer. Incoming message from an unknown sender within the fleet. He opened it. It was the video. He watched, horrified, as his past self confidently explained the mission parameters, watched himself burst into the shelter, watched the honey badger arrive like a furry apocalypse, watched himself and Tick run for their lives while something that looked like it should be selling insurance commercials dismantled their dignity piece by piece. And yes, someone had set it to music. Specifically, to something called Yakety Sax from Earth's ancient entertainment archives. Don't watch it, he told Tick. Too late. Someone sent it to my personal account, with commentary. What kind of commentary? The kind that suggests we consider alternative career paths. Flower arrangement was mentioned. Also baking. Vex 9 closed the file and initiated the shuttle's departure sequence. Earth shrank behind them, green and blue and absolutely not worth the trouble. You know what the worst part is? Tick said quietly. The public humiliation. The fact that she's still down there. Maya, that little human girl who watched 2 advanced alien soldiers get absolutely destroyed by her planet's wildlife. She's going to tell everyone. She's going to tell her family, her friends, her entire species. So now humans know that we're afraid of honey badgers. They know that their wildlife can defeat our military technology. They know that we're not the unstoppable conquerors we pretend to be. Vex 9 hadn't thought of that. He thought about it now. And that's actually really bad, isn't it? Catastrophically bad. Strategically disastrous. The kind of intelligence leak that changes the entire dynamic of first contact scenarios. They sat with that realization as the shuttle broke orbit and aligned for the jump to hyperspace. Maybe she won't tell anyone, Vex 9 said without conviction. Would you keep that story to yourself? Not even for 1,000,000 credits. Exactly. The shuttle jumped. Stars streaked past. Somewhere behind them, Earth continued spinning, completely unconcerned that it had stars doubters, just fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power by having really aggressive wildlife. 3 days later, at Archive Station Theta 7, Vex 9 was processing his 4,000th historical document when the news broke. It started as a rumor on human communication networks. Then it became a story. Then it became a viral phenomenon that spread through Earth's digital infrastructure like wildfire. The story of Maya, the 8-year-old girl who was almost abducted by aliens, and the honey badger that saved her. It had everything humans loved: danger, heroism, and the David versus Goliath narrative that seemed to be hardwired into their psychology. Within 48 hours, there were songs, animated adaptations, and merchandise. Someone had made a stuffed toy of the honey badger wearing combat armor. Within a week, humanity's attitude toward potential alien contact had shifted dramatically. They'd gone from vaguely hopeful to aggressively confident. Why should they fear species that ran from their wildlife? Why should they worry about advanced technology when Earth's ecosystem was apparently a better defense system than any weapon? The Galactic Council watched this development with growing alarm. Emergency sessions were called. Policies were reviewed. The entire Earth extraction program was suspended indefinitely, while strategists tried to figure out how one small mammal had managed to accomplish what 3 centuries of military planning couldn't. It unified humanity's response to the stars. In the Archive Station's break room, Vex 9 and Tick watched the human news feeds with a sense of mounting horror. "We did this," Tick whispered. "We created this situation. Technically, the honey badger created this situation. We provided the catalyst." On the screen, a human news anchor was interviewing a wildlife expert about honey badgers. The expert was explaining, with barely contained glee, that honey badgers were known for attacking lions, raiding beehives despite being stung thousands of times, and generally existing in a state of permanent offense against the universe. "They have no fear," the expert said, practically glowing with pride. "They're too aggressive to be afraid. If aliens are scared of honey badgers, imagine what they'd think of our actual military forces." The humans in the studio audience cheered. "We're never going to live this down," Vex 9 said. "Nope. Archive duty forever." "Yep. Maybe flower arrangement wouldn't be so bad. I'm seriously considering it." They sat in silence, watching as humanity collectively decided that if their wildlife could defend them, maybe they were more formidable than anyone had assumed. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. On Earth, in a small house near the edge of the Amazon, Maya was telling her story for the 100th time. Her father listened with a mixture of pride and concern. Her mother had already called 3 different government agencies to report the incident. And, somewhere in the jungle, a honey badger was going about its business, completely unaware that it had become the galaxy's most improbable defensive weapon. It was digging for grubs, fighting with a snake, and generally maintaining its perfect record of not caring about anything. Because that's what honey badgers do. They don't care. Not about aliens, not about military technology, not about the complex political ramifications of interspecies conflict. They just wake up every day and choose violence. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what the situation calls for. Back on the Archive Station, Vex 9 received one final message. It was from Admiral Cross. "Commander, due to recent developments stemming from your mission, the Council has decided that Earth is to be classified as a Category 9 protected world. No extraction attempts, no military action, no contact whatsoever until they achieve faster-than-light capability on their own. Congratulations. Your catastrophic failure has been reclassified as a strategic success. You've protected an entire species through sheer incompetence. Your archive duty is reduced to 3 cycles. Try not to mess anything else up. Cross out." Vex 9 stared at the message. "Did we just accidentally save humanity?" Tick asked, reading over his shoulder. "I think we did. By running away from a badger. By recognizing when we were outmatched and retreating strategically. That's not what happened. That's what I'm putting in my memoirs." They looked at each other and started laughing. It was the kind of laughter that comes from surviving something ridiculous. The kind that acknowledges the universe has a truly bizarre sense of humor. Somewhere in the archives, a historical document quietly filed itself. Somewhere on Earth, a honey badger continued not caring. And somewhere in the vast complexity of galactic politics, the balance of power had shifted because of 12 kilograms of fury and a human child who'd been in the wrong place at exactly the right time. The universe was weird like that, and that was just fine.